Hello and welcome to Read It with Whiskey, the place to be if you are a sci-fi or fantasy reader. My name is Laura and I am your host. I am a reader, writer, and whiskey drinker, and today we are going to be talking about book tracking systems. When you read books, do you track what books you read? Do you have a system in place where you can go back and say, hey, these are the books that I read? A lot of people don't. A lot of people just read books and move on. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how. I'm one of those people that needs to be able to look back and see the progress that they've made. Otherwise, I just feel like a failure. Like, I don't know about you, but that's just me. So I like to see the progress that I've made. That's one of the reasons I use Goodreads. It's one of the reasons why I have Read It with Whiskey, because I want to be able to go back and look at all the things that I've done, all the books that I've read, all that kind of stuff. So when it comes to book tracking, what systems do you use and what struggles do you currently have? The easiest way for me to track books is through Goodreads. I've been using Goodreads for a while and I really wish I had been using Goodreads sooner. And this is not the bonus episode about Goodreads. I will get to that. I swear it's coming, you guys. But Goodreads is one of the ways that I track the books I read, but it's not the way that I track all of the details. I have been a fan of bullet journaling for a really long time. I don't talk about it much, but I love a good bullet journal. I love watching journal content on Instagram, on YouTube. I'm like a total sucker for it. But bullet journaling is how I actually track all of the books that I read. I have tried the online systems. Like I said, I do use Goodreads, but not to the extent that I do in bullet journaling. Online systems are great, even saving your books and tracking them via Excel or Google Sheets or something like that. All of those are great, but I love putting pen to paper when it comes to tracking the books that I read. I've been using the same system since about, I want to say 2017 was when I started writing down the books that I read. And I mean, in the last bonus episode, I talked about reviews, and this system started before I actually started reviewing books online. Like I said, that was more around 2019 when I started reviewing books. If you want to talk more about reviews, go ahead and jump into that last bonus episode. That episode was released on November 15th, so go check it out. But back in 2017, 2018, I was writing down all of the books that I was reading and the author's name, and that was about it. I was just tracking to see what books I had been reading. And this was right around the start of my entrepreneurial spirit. I was really into trying to develop a business for myself, and I did a bunch of different business ideas and brainstorming and stuff. So there was a lot of personal development books that I had been reading, and that's why I actually started writing down the books that I was reading, was because I wanted to remember what books I had read in my professional development. And I wanted to be able to go back and track and see where my notes were, all of the different ideas that had gone from that book, like my biggest takeaways, things like that. So alongside of writing down these personal and professional development books, I also had journals where I was taking notes about these books at the same time. So I was already recording these professional development books in my bullet journal. And then I would read a fiction book every once in a while. And I was like, hey, I might as well write those ones down too. So then I can track how many books I read in a year. And that's how this whole story started. So I went back to that original bullet journal and I realized that I hated that aspect of having to go back to that original reading journal every single time I wanted to look back at the books that I had been reading in the past. So I have actually compiled all of the books I've read since the end of 2017 into one single Moleskine journal. And I'm actually going to be tracking my books in this journal for until the journal fills up. So this journal could last like years, like a decade. It could probably, well, depending how fast I read. But anyway, I went through and I wrote down all of the books that I had read since I started tracking. And I actually started tracking with the Radium Girls in October of 2017. So in 2017, I had 4 books that I read. 2018, it was 23 books. 2019 was 61. 2020 was 70. Then we made a huge leap in 2021 to 109 books. I still can't believe I read 109 books in 1 year. And I'm not going to tell you how many books I've read in 2022 because the first bonus episode in 2023 is going to be all about the books I read and the books that I'm going to be reading in 2023. So I'm not going to tell you yet. You'll have to wait for that bonus episode. So when it comes to my bullet journal, and I do actually have a video and post that have gone up the same day that this episode released, and you're going to be able to actually see my bullet journal and what it has evolved from and into over the years. So definitely check out at Read It With Whiskey on Instagram to see the actual bullet journal. But what I actually track in my bullet journal is the format of the book, how the book was published, the purpose behind reading the book, and then finally the genre. So like I said, the format is the first thing. So that is the book a paperback, a hardback, an ebook, an audiobook? Did I read it in a hybrid format? And I'll have to do an episode on hybrid reading. I know I've talked about it in the past, but I haven't specifically in these bonus episodes. So hybrid reading is going to be coming up, you guys. I like to track the format of the book that I read just to see what my average is. It's always paperback. Paperback is always the winner. But especially since doing the Kindle challenge, and that episode came out on October 18th when I talked about the Kindle reading challenge that I did back in the summertime. Since reading all of those ebooks, I know that my average is going to be swayed significantly this year because I've read more ebooks in 2022 than I ever have in the last probably 4 or 5 years. So I like to be able to track the format of the book that I'm reading. The next thing is how it's published. And this all came about because of Read It With Whiskey. For this podcast, I only read books that are self-published or indie published. And I mean, I read other books, but the authors who are featured are only indie or self-published. And that is purposeful because I am a self-published author myself. And when I first became a self-published author, I had some trouble marketing and getting my book out there. And that should be another topic for a bonus episode in the near future. So I track, is the book traditionally or mass marketed? Is it self-published or indie published with a small indie press? Or is it unknown? Is it something where I read it and I'm like, I have no idea where this was published, which does happen, which is weird. After that, I have the category of why did I read this book? I do have a whole section dedicated to Read It With Whiskey because a lot of the books that I read are for this podcast. There's another section for business, if there's a business purpose, professional development reason why I'm reading a book. Also, when it comes to nonfiction, is it a spiritual based or a self-help type of book? So that would be in that category as well. Or is the book just for fun? And I do read a lot of books just for fun because I want to take the pressure off. When I'm reading books for Read It With Whiskey, I am thinking about, hey, what can I talk about with the author in the interview? So reading books just for fun, taking a fiction book and just reading it front to back for no reason is very therapeutic for me. So I want to know what books or how many books I have read just for fun. And finally, we have genre, and genre is huge. Obviously, for Read It With Whiskey, it's always sci-fi or fantasy, but it wasn't always. It used to be all genres, and I still read those just for fun books, and those are usually outside of the sci-fi fantasy genre just to cleanse my palate. And I will talk more about genre in a bonus episode coming up. So those are the different categories I track my books. What the format is, how it's published, the reason behind reading it, the genre, and then the rating and review. Head on over to Instagram at Read It With Whiskey to actually see this journal and tell me how you track your book. Do you track your book in a paper format? Do you take pictures and put them on your wall? I know there's some people who they make little mini books and they put them on like mini bookshelves. So super cute. And we'll also talk about how you choose your next book from your TBR list in a future episode, because that's a huge component about tracking books is what book am I going to be reading next? So that'll be coming up in a future episode. Book tracking is fun. I love it. I love being able to go and look back at what I have read. And I hope you guys share with me how you guys track your books. All right, so I wanted to pop in here. This is way after I initially recorded this episode, but I wanted to give you guys a little bit of an update. And I think I'm going to start doing this every week or every couple weeks, just giving you an update on my reading and writing in life. So a quick little update for you guys. Back in one of the previous bonus episodes, I talked about how I was doing a NaNoWriMo reading challenge. And if that doesn't make sense to you, go back and listen to that episode. Yeah, I actually succeeded. I was able to write 50,000 words by November 27th, which as this episode goes out, that was 2 days ago, hence why I'm giving you an update late after I record this. I usually record the episodes about a week before their release. Anyway, I was able to hit 50,000 words in NaNoWriMo, and I was able to get my words in first thing in the morning before ever picking up a book. So I succeeded in my NaNoWriMo reading challenge, and I'm very, very excited about it. And I am on such a roll that I'm going to keep this going. I want to try and keep this challenge going through the end of the year, writing at least 500 words every single day and not reading until those words are in. So this is going to be huge. This is definitely putting myself out of my comfort zone because I love to read first thing in the morning. So this should be interesting. I just wanted to give you that little update. And if you're wondering, what book are you writing, Laura? Well, I will be revealing that very, very soon. I don't want to really talk about it too much until I'm done with the first draft. I am about 52,000 words in as of right now, and I want the book to be landing right around 100K. So I've got a lot of work to do, but I am doing really, really well and just pushing forward. And I'm really excited to bring it out into the world. I am debating if I want to put it under a pen name or under my actual name. So stay tuned on that information as well. So that is my writing update for the day. My reading update for the day, I am currently reading Save the Cat Writes a Novel by Jessica Brody. And this is to help me figure out where my plot is going for the writing project that I'm working on because I'm kind of stuck. So I'm reading through that book, which I've had so many people recommend it to me. And then my just for fun read is Lost in Time by A.G. Riddle. And this is kind of like a multi-dimensional time shift type of book. And you guys, I'm absolutely loving it. It's actually research for one of my upcoming science fiction books that I'm going to be writing within 2023. So it's really fun to kind of dive into this type of world that I'm going to be creating very, very soon. And finally, I am also reading for Read It With Whiskey, The Cursed and the Broken by Chloe Hodge. And she just revealed the cover for book 2 on Instagram this weekend. And you guys, it is beautiful. It's called The Fated and the Damned. So I'm really excited to dive into this book by Chloe. I just finished up another book for the show, and I'm going to be interviewing, I think, 3 people within the next couple weeks. So definitely go to @ReadItWithWhiskey on Instagram because I go into my stories after the interviews and I talk a little bit about the interview, how it went, about the books. And so that's a really great place to learn about what's coming up next on the show in real time, which is just incredible. So much fun. So that is my writing and reading update and my life update. I am plugging along with my books and not doing much else. I have attended a few different book festivals, which is something that I'm really, really excited about. I guess I should call them markets. They're not technically book festivals. They are Christmas markets here in Little Seymour, Indiana. I've gone to 2 so far. The first one I sold out. I sold, I think, almost 25 books. And then the second one was a total flop. I think I sold maybe 3 books and like a few little merch items. So it was definitely not as successful, but I still made my money back from the booth fee. So I was happy about it. And I have another one coming up on December 10th, again, here in Seymour, Indiana. So if you're nearby, really stay close attention to my Instagram @LauraJLive because that's where I announce the events that I'm doing that are local. I also talk about virtual events that I'm going to be going to on there as well. So on Instagram @LauraJLive. All right, reading, writing, and life update complete. And let's talk about what's coming up next week. Next week on Read It With Whiskey, we are back to an interview, and we're going to be talking to Christy Nicole. She wrote the book Something Blue, and this is a dystopian romance. It's been out for a few years, and I will tell you the story of how I actually fell upon this author by chance. Really, really fun story about how I found her, but also it's a really, really fun book to read. I love dystopian romance and dystopian in general, but throwing the romance in there definitely switches it up a bit for our Read It With Whiskey books that I usually read. So tune in next week. I'll talk to you then. You've been listening to an episode of Read It With Whiskey. I'm your host, Laura Juntunen, and I want to personally say thank you so much for listening. Your support of the podcast means so much to me, and I would love to get to know you. Hop on over to Instagram and follow us at Read It With Whiskey. Please chime in on this episode's post, share it on your social media and with your friends, and come back next time to hear more from self-published authors. I'll talk to you soon.